Captain Day One stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching the massive council station grow larger on the view screen. The structure was enormous, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. It hung in space like a metal moon, reflecting the light from the nearby neutron star. He had been to the station twice before for peaceful meetings, but this time felt different. The message they received 3 days ago had been cold and formal, lacking the usual diplomatic pleasantries. His communications officer, Hannah, looked up from her console with worried eyes. She was young but sharp, always the first to notice when something was wrong. "Captain, I'm picking up unusual traffic patterns. Multiple council warships in the area. More than normal for a diplomatic session?" Day One nodded slowly. He had noticed the same thing. In the distance, he could see at least 15 large vessels from different species, all armed and all positioned strategically around the station. It looked less like a welcome and more like a trap. G-Wu, the chief negotiator, entered the bridge carrying a datapad. She had spent the entire journey reviewing Earth's diplomatic history with the Council. "I've gone through every interaction we've had with them over the past 5 years. We've followed every protocol, honored every agreement. I can't find any reason why they'd summon us like this." "Maybe they don't need a reason," said Taesung, the military advisor. He was a tall man with calculating eyes, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Power doesn't need justification when no one can challenge it. The Horizon docked at Port 17, and Day One led his team through the long corridors of the station. The air felt heavy with tension. Alien species from across the galaxy moved through the halls, but none of them made eye contact with the human delegation. It was as if they already knew what was about to happen and wanted no part of it. The council chambers were designed to intimidate. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and the seats were arranged in concentric circles rising up like an ancient amphitheater. Representatives from over 200 species filled the chamber, their various forms creating a bizarre collection of shapes and colors. At the center of it all sat Velthros, the council leader, a being made of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. Day One and his team took their place in the defended circle at the center of the floor. The positioning wasn't subtle. They were surrounded on all sides, with nowhere to retreat. Velthros spoke, and his voice echoed through translation devices in every language simultaneously. "The Council has completed its evaluation of humanity. After careful consideration of your species' behavior, technological development, and potential threat to galactic stability, we have reached a decision." Ji-Woo stepped forward. "Earth has operated in good faith since joining the galactic community. We have shared our medical advances, contributed to scientific research, and maintained peaceful relations with all species we've encountered." And the word seemed to physically push Ji-Woo back a step. "The Council does not require your justifications. The decision is final. Humanity is hereby designated as a probationary species. You are forbidden from expanding beyond your solar system. All military vessels must be surrendered to Council authority within 30 days. Earth will submit to oversight by appointed Council observers who will ensure compliance with our regulations." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Day One felt his team tense around him, but he kept his face neutral. Inside, his mind was racing. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a diktat. "And if we refuse?" Day One asked quietly. A reptilian delegate named Cassix laughed, a harsh hissing sound. "Refuse you primitives with your dozen little ships? Look around you, human. The Council commands fleets from hundreds of worlds, billions of vessels. You have nothing. You are nothing. You exist because we permit it." Other delegates joined in the laughter. Day One looked up at them, at the casual contempt in their faces. They truly believed humanity had no choice. They had probably delivered this same ultimatum to dozens of species before, and every time the answer had been the same: submission or destruction. Ji-Woo tried again. "We request time to bring this matter before Earth's government. Surely the Council understands that such a significant decision requires proper consultation." "You have 30 days to comply," Velthros repeated. "This session is concluded." The dismissal was absolute. Guards appeared to escort the human delegation out of the chambers. Day-One walked slowly, keeping his dignity intact, even as rage burned in his chest. They had been given no chance to argue, no opportunity to present evidence of Earth's peaceful intentions. The Council had already decided, probably before the horizon had even arrived. Back on the ship, the team gathered in the captain's ready room. Giwu slumped in her chair, exhausted from the encounter. I've never seen anything like that. They didn't even pretend to listen. It was pure theater. Because they've done this before, Taesoon said, pulling up data on his console. I've been reviewing historical records. In the past 200 years, 17 species have been placed on probationary status. All of them complied. 3 that showed resistance were blockaded until their economies collapsed. The Council doesn't negotiate because they've never had to. Hannah was already working on the secure communication system. Captain, I'm ready to send the encrypted message to Earth Command whenever you give the word. Day-One stared at the Council station through the window. It represented everything wrong with the galaxy's current order. A system built on intimidation and control, where innovation was punished and independence was a crime. Humanity had spent centuries fighting against tyranny on Earth. They had built a world, government based on freedom and self-determination. And now some collection of ancient aliens thought they could simply take that away. Send the message, Day-One ordered. Include everything. Their demands, their threats, the size of their forces in this sector. And add my personal assessment, which is, Jiwoo asked, that the Council is afraid. They're not doing this to protect the galaxy. They're doing it because they see humanity's rapid advancement as a threat to their control. They want to cage us now, before we become powerful enough to challenge them. Day-One turned to face his team. And that means we have something they fear. The question is whether Earth is willing to use it. The message was sent through channels the Council couldn't monitor. Using quantum encryption that Earth had developed independently, within hours, it would reach Admiral Kung-Soo at United Earth, command on Luna, and then the real decisions would begin. Day-One looked back at the Council station one more time. 30 days. They thought that was enough time to break humanity's spirit, to make Earth accept the inevitable. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and climate catastrophe. They had gone from stone tools to faster-than-light travel in a few 1,000 years. The Council was about to learn that caging humanity was easy. Keeping them caged was impossible. The emergency session at United Earth Command in Geneva was the most important meeting in human history. Every major government had sent representatives. Military leaders filled one side of the room, while civilian authorities occupied the other. At the head of the table sat President Hyun-ji, her face calm despite the crisis. She had been elected 2 years ago on a platform of galactic cooperation. Now she faced a decision that could end humanity's journey to the stars. Before it truly began, Admiral Kyung-soo stood before the massive display screen, showing the Council's ultimatum. He was a veteran of Earth's unification wars, a man who had seen the worst of human conflict and dedicated his life to preventing it from happening again. But now he faced an enemy that made old Earth nations look like children playing with toys. The numbers are simple, Kung-soo began. The Council commands military forces from over 200 species. Conservative estimates put their total fleet strength at more than 50,000 warships. Earth has 42 vessels, most of them exploration ships with minimal weapons. If we fight conventionally, we lose. Badly. Defense Minister Biora leaned forward. Then we comply. We accept their terms, work within their system, and hope that eventually they'll recognize our peaceful intentions. They won't, said Intelligence Director Mina. She pulled up data on the display, showing the fate of other species who had submitted to Council authority. I've spent the past year analyzing the Council's history. Every species that accepted probationary status stayed in that status. Forever. No, the Council doesn't promote species to full membership. They just slowly absorb them into their system until they lose all independence. The room erupted in arguments. Some demanded immediate military action. Others insisted that diplomacy was the only path forward. President Haeonji let them talk for several minutes before raising her hand for silence. Admiral Kyung-soo, you said, if we fight conventionally, we lose. That implies there's an unconventional option. Kunsu nodded and gestured to Chief Engineer Soyen. She was small and quiet, the kind of person who preferred machines to people. But when she spoke, everyone listened. For the past 15 years, we've been preparing for this scenario, Sojin explained. When Earth first made contact with the galaxy, we discovered something disturbing. The Council controls all the wormhole gates that allow fast travel between star systems. You want to move quickly through space, you need their permission. It's the foundation of their power. She pulled up technical diagrams. So we developed an alternative. The slip drive. It creates temporary tunnels through space-time without using the Council's gates. It's slower than their wormholes and uses more energy, but it's completely independent. We've been secretly installing it on every Earth vessel for the past 3 years. The Council doesn't know we have this, President Hyenji asked. No. All our diplomatic ships use conventional drives when traveling to Council space. We've been very careful to hide this capability. Mina added more information to the display. We've also been studying Council military doctrine. They haven't fought a real war in over 3,000 years. Their fleets are designed to intimidate through size, not to engage in actual combat. When they do fight, they use predictable formations and outdated tactics. They rely on energy shields and numerical superiority. Commander Jaehin from the Weapons Division took over, which is where our advantage comes in. We've developed kinetic weapons that can punch through energy shields using pure mass and velocity. Our missiles use adaptive AI that learns from enemy countermeasures in real time. And our communication systems are based on quantum entanglement, which means they can't be jammed or intercepted. Kyung-soo walked to the center of the room. Here's what we know. The Council thinks we're primitives who stumbled into space with borrowed technology. They think we'll surrender because we have no choice. But they've made assumptions based on species who had no experience with large-scale conflict. Earth is different. We've been fighting wars since we lived in caves. We've spent thousands of years perfecting the art of combat, and we've poured all that knowledge into our space program. You're proposing we actually fight them? Biora asked, disbelief in her voice. I'm proposing we show them that fighting us is more costly than accepting us as equals, Kung-Su replied. We can't win a total war, but we don't need to. We just need to hurt them badly enough that they realize subjugating Earth isn't worth the price. President Hyenji stood and walked to the window overlooking Geneva. Outside, people went about their daily lives, unaware that their future was being decided in this room. If we fight and lose, they'll destroy us. If we surrender, we lose our freedom. Either way, we lose something precious. There's a third option, said Mina. We fight and win. Not a total victory, but enough to force them to negotiate from a position of respect rather than dominance. How, the president asked Tak Kung-Su, activated a tactical display. The Council gave us 30 days. I think we'll spend that time debating and eventually accepting the inevitable. Instead, we use that time to position our assets. Every ship with a slip drive moves to predetermined coordinates. We identify high-value Council targets that are poorly defended. And on day 30, we strike simultaneously at multiple locations. Hit them everywhere at once, Jaehin continued. Destroy their shipyards. Disable their fleet assembly points. Take out their communication hubs. Show them that we can reach any target we want, whenever we want. Make them understand that even if they eventually defeat us, we'll make them pay for every inch of ground. The plan was audacious, insane even. But as Kung-Su laid out the details, it began to make sense. Earth couldn't match the Council's numbers, but they could match their tactics. Humans had invented guerrilla warfare, asymmetric conflict, and strategic targeting against an enemy that only knew how to win through overwhelming force. These tactics might actually work. President Hyenji returned to her seat. I want opinions. Minister Biora. Biora shook her head. I still think it's too risky. But I also understand that surrendering our sovereignty isn't a real option. If we must fight, we should do it smart, not hard. One by one, the leaders around the table gave their input. Military commanders were confident they could execute the plan. Scientists believed the technology would work. Intelligence officials confirmed that the Council's defenses had gaps that could be exploited. Finally, President Hyenji made her decision. we fight. Not because we want war, but because we refuse to kneel. Admiral Kunsu, you have authorization to proceed with your plan. Use the full resources of Earth's military. May whatever gods are listening protect us all. Kunsu saluted. We won't let humanity down. As the meeting broke up, Soyan approached the Admiral. You really think this will work? I think the Council has forgotten what it's like to face an enemy with nothing to lose, Kung Su replied. They've spent millennia as the biggest power in the galaxy. They've forgotten that sometimes the small and desperate can hurt the large and comfortable. We're going to remind them. Orders went out immediately. Every Earth vessel received encrypted instructions. Slip drive coordinates were programmed. Weapons were armed and tested. Across the solar system, humanity prepared for war. In her office late that night, President Hanji recorded a message to be released if the plan failed. To whoever finds this, know that humanity did not go quietly into subjugation. We fought for our freedom because freedom is worth fighting for. We may have lost, but we lost on our feet, not on our knees. But hope alone wouldn't win this fight. It's only courage, skill, and the willingness. To risk everything would determine whether humanity remained free or became just another subject species in the Council's empire. The countdown had begun. 29 days remained. Day 29 arrived with no fanfare. On the Council station, Velthros sat in his private chambers reviewing Earth's expected surrender declaration. The document had already been prepared by Council bureaucrats, requiring only humanity's signature. It was the same template used for every probationary species, with slight modifications for Earth-specific circumstances. He felt confident the humans would sign. They always did. Captain Daywan stood on the bridge of the horizon, still docked at the Council station. For the past month, he and his crew had maintained the appearance of defeated diplomats, waiting for their final orders. But below the surface, they had been busy. Na had spent weeks mapping every system on the station, identifying vulnerabilities, and creating backdoor access points. Taesung's Marines had memorized every corridor, every security checkpoint, every patrol route. The clock showed 05:45 station time, 15 minutes until the operation began. All teams in position, Taesun reported quietly. His Marines were scattered throughout the station, disguised as maintenance workers and diplomatic staff. Each carried concealed weapons and cutting tools. Each knew exactly where to go when the signal came. At Earth Command on Luna, Admiral Kunsu watched multiple displays showing the positions of every Earth vessel. The fleet was small but perfectly positioned. The carrier Sol hung in deep space near Veltros Prime, the Council's main shipyard. Captain Sujin's strike group waited near Cassix's homeworld, where a large Council fleet was assembled. Smaller teams were positioned near communication relays and supply depots throughout Council space. Soyan stood beside him, monitoring the slip drive systems on every ship. The technology was about to get its first real combat test. If even one drive failed during a jump, that ship would be stranded and vulnerable. All vessels report ready status, she confirmed. Drives are charged and coordinates locked in. Kung Su looked at the chronometer. 2 minutes. He thought about all the things that could go wrong. The drives could malfunction. The Council could have better defenses than expected. Earth's ships could be destroyed before accomplishing their objectives. But doubt was a luxury he couldn't afford now. All units, this is command. Execute Operation Firelight. At exactly 0600, everything happened at once. On the Council station, Taesum led his team through a service corridor toward the central communications hub. They moved with practiced efficiency, their training evident in every step. When they encountered 2 Council security guards, the Marines disabled them with stun weapons before they could raise an alarm. The guards dropped without a sound. The communications hub door was reinforced and locked. Tasum pulled out a plasma cutter, a tool supposedly for ship repairs, but perfectly capable of cutting through military-grade barriers. The metal glowed red, then white, then gave way. His team poured through the opening, inside. 3 technicians from different species stared in shock at the armed humans bursting into their workspace. Hannah was right behind the Marines, carrying a data spike. She went straight to the main console and plugged it in. Don't move, Taesun, ordered the technicians in Galactic Standard. "Stay calm, and you won't be hurt." Hannah's fingers flew across the interface. He had spent weeks preparing this virus, a piece of code designed to crash every communication relay in the sector. The Council's systems were ancient and standardized, which made them predictable. She uploaded the program and watched it spread. "It's working," she said. "Communications going down across 50 light-years. They'll be blind for at least 6 hours." Simultaneously, the Sol dropped out of slip drive above Veltro's prime. Commander Jameen stood on the carrier's bridge, looking down at the massive shipyard. Dozens of Council warships were under construction, huge vessels that would have taken Earth decades to build. But they were stationary, unshielded, and completely unprepared for attack. "All batteries, fire at will," Jamin ordered calmly. The Sol's railguns opened up. Kinetic projectiles launched at tremendous velocity, each one a solid slug of dense metal moving at a fraction of light speed. When they hit the first target, the results were devastating. Shields designed to stop energy weapons offered no protection against simple mass and momentum. The projectile punched through the ship's hull and continued through to the other side, leaving a perfectly round hole that immediately vented atmosphere and debris. The shipyard's automated defenses activated, launching missiles and energy beams toward the Sol. But Jamin was ready. Earth's point defense systems, refined through hundreds of simulations, intercepted the missiles with precision fire. The energy beams dissipated against the Sol's shields, which were specifically designed to counter that type of weapon. "Deploy drone swarms," Jamin commanded. Thousands of small autonomous drones launched from the Sol's bays. Each was no bigger than a basketball, but together they formed an intelligent cloud of destruction. They swarmed over the shipyard's defensive platforms, overwhelming targeting systems and destroying sensors. The platforms tried to respond but couldn't track so many small, fast-moving targets. At Cassix's homeworld, Captain Sujin executed her part of the operation with surgical precision. 50 Council cruisers sat in neat formation, preparing for a routine patrol. They were powerful ships, but they had their shields down and weapons offline. Never expecting an attack in their own territory, Sujin's strike group emerged from slip drive at the perfect angle. Target propulsion and weapons systems only. No casualties if possible. Her crew fired missiles that had been programmed with detailed information about Council's ship designs. Each missile knew exactly where to hit to disable without destroying. They streaked toward the Council fleet, their adaptive AI adjusting trajectories to counter the belated defensive fire. The first wave hit with devastating accuracy. Propulsion systems exploded. Weapon batteries went dark. Within minutes, the entire Council fleet was dead in space, powerless to respond or retreat. Sujin's ships didn't linger. They completed their mission and jumped back into slip drive before reinforcements could arrive. Back at the Council station, chaos erupted. Velthros burst into the control center demanding answers, but no one had any. Communications were down. Reports were coming in through backup systems about attacks at multiple locations. The humans, the supposedly primitive species with their small fleet, were striking everywhere at once. Daewon chose that moment to broadcast on all available frequencies. His face appeared on every screen throughout the station. "This is Captain Daewon of Earth to the Council. We reject your ultimatum. Humanity will not surrender its sovereignty to your authority. We have demonstrated our ability to strike any target we choose. This is not aggression. This is defense of our fundamental right to self-determination." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We do not seek war, but we will not accept slavery dressed up as protection. Earth offers the Council a simple choice. Recognize humanity as equals, with full rights and freedoms, or continue this conflict and learn just how costly it will be." Cassix appeared on a communication channel, his reptilian face twisted with rage. "You dare? You primitives dare attack us. We will crush your pathetic planet. We will turn Earth into dust." "You're welcome to try," Daewon replied calmly. "But ask yourself this. If we could strike your homeworld's fleet without warning, what makes you think we can't strike your homeworld itself? We've shown restraint. We disabled your ships rather than destroying them. We targeted military assets rather than civilians. But if you push us, that restraint will end. It was a bluff, but a convincing one. Earth had no intention of attacking civilian targets, but the Council didn't know that. All they knew was that these humans had technology they didn't understand, and tactics they couldn't predict. Velthros finally found his voice. This is an act of war, No Day One corrected. This is a demonstration. War is what happens if you don't take us seriously. The transmission ended. On the bridge of the horizon, Day One's hands were shaking slightly, though his face remained calm. They had just attacked the most powerful organization in the galaxy. There was no going back now. Taesoon secured the communications hub, setting up defensive positions. Captain, we're not leaving this station alive, are we? Probably not, Day One admitted. But we've done what we came to do. Earth knows we've bought them time. Now it's up to the fleet. Admiral Kungsu watched the reports flowing in from every strike team. All objectives achieved. Minimal casualties. Earth's forces were already withdrawing, using their slip drives to vanish before the Council could mount a coordinated response. President, ING appeared on his screen. Admiral, the whole world is watching. Did it work? The first phase worked perfectly, Kungsu replied. But now comes the hard part. The Council will respond. They have to, or they lose all credibility. We've just kicked a sleeping giant. Now we need to survive when it wakes up angry. The Council chamber had never seen such disorder. Representatives from 200 species shouted over each other, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sounds, lights, and chemical signals. Velthros stood at the center, his crystalline form pulsing with barely controlled anger. For 3,000 years, the Council had maintained order through unchallenged authority. Now a single species had shattered that illusion in a matter of hours. Kasich slammed his clawed appendage on his console. We must respond with overwhelming force. Gather every fleet, every ship, every weapon we possess, and crush Earth into atoms. Make them an example that will be remembered for 1,000 generations. Several delegates voiced agreement. The avian representative from Theros spread her wings wide. The humans have shown they cannot be trusted. They pretend to negotiate while planning treachery. They must be eliminated. But not everyone agreed. A delegate from the Kelvin Collective, a species of aquatic beings, raised a tentacle. Perhaps we should ask ourselves why they attacked. We gave them an ultimatum with no room for discussion. We treated them as subjects before they agreed to be subjects. Maybe the fault lies with us. Treason, Kasich hissed. You would side with these barbarians? I side with reason, the Kelvin responded calmly. They disabled our ships rather than destroying them. They targeted military assets rather than civilians. Even in their attack, they showed restraint. That suggests they are not the mindless aggressors we assumed them to be. Velthros raised a hand for silence. Enough debate. The Council's authority has been challenged. We will respond. Admiral Tharvin, how quickly can we assemble a fleet? Admiral Tharvin, a four-armed insectoid military commander, clicked his mandibles together. I can have 300 warships assembled within 1 week. Ships from 12 different species, representing the full might of the Council's military power. But I must warn you, these humans fight unlike any enemy we have encountered before. Their technology is different from ours, and their tactics are unpredictable. 300 ships against 40, Velthros said. Unpredictable tactics cannot overcome such odds. Perhaps Tharvin replied carefully. But I recommend we study their attack patterns before engaging. They struck 3 targets simultaneously, suggesting excellent coordination. They appeared and disappeared without using our wormhole gates, which means they have independent faster-than-light capability. And they knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum disruption with minimum force. On Earth, preparations intensified. Admiral Kungsu stood in the command center, coordinating defensive positions throughout the solar system. Engineer Soyun worked around the clock, deploying orbital defense platforms around Earth, Mars, Luna, and the larger asteroid colonies. Each platform carried railguns and missile batteries. all linked through quantum communication networks that couldn't be jammed, Commander. Jahan activated Earth's secret weapon, something they had been building for years but never tested in combat. Autonomous defense drones, tens of thousands of them, each equipped with small explosive charges and guided by sophisticated AI. Individually, they were insignificant, but in coordinated swarms they could overwhelm larger vessels. Intelligence. Director Minna briefed the command staff on what she had learned from intercepted Council communications. Their fleet is assembling at Junction Point Theta, about 20 light-years from Earth. They're bringing ships from a dozen different species, which creates an interesting problem for them. Each species has different communication protocols, different tactical doctrines, and different command structures. They're trying to coordinate this through the Council's standardized command network, but it's showing strain. That's our advantage, Kung Su said. They're used to fighting enemies who use the same basic technology and tactics they do. We're completely outside their frame of reference. President Hyun-ji addressed Earth's population in a historic broadcast. She stood in front of the United Earth flag, her voice steady and clear. My fellow citizens of Earth, by now you know what has happened. The Council gave us an ultimatum to surrender our freedom or face destruction. We chose freedom. In the coming days, they will send a fleet to force our submission. We will face ships that outnumber our own. We will face technology refined over millennia. But we will not face these challenges alone or unprepared. She paused, looking directly into the camera. Humanity has always been at its best when challenged. We have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed lesser species. We have gone from caves to starships in the blink of cosmic time, and we have done it by refusing to accept that any challenge is insurmountable. The Council thinks we will break under pressure. They are about to learn how wrong they are. The broadcast was transmitted throughout Earth's solar system and beyond, reaching even the far colonies on the outer planets. Millions watched, feeling fear and pride in equal measure. On the Council station, Captain Dae-won and his crew had turned their section into a fortress. Taesong's Marines controlled 3 key corridors in the communications hub. They had supplies to last for weeks and weapons to hold their position against considerable force. Council security had attempted to retake the hub twice, but both attempts had been repelled with minimal casualties on either side. Ji-woo spent her time monitoring Council broadcasts, listening to their internal debates. They're more divided than they appear, she told Dae-won. Many species are questioning whether this conflict is necessary. The Kelvin Collective has formally protested the military response. 3 other species have expressed concerns about the costs of war, but they're still sending the fleet, Dae-won said. Yes, because Velthros and Kasix have convinced them that allowing Earth to defy the Council will encourage other species to rebel. They're not just trying to punish us, they're trying to send a message to every species in the galaxy. Hannah looked up from her console. Captain, I'm picking up movement at Junction Point Theta. The Council fleet is beginning to move. 300 capital ships, plus support vessels. They're heading toward Earth. Dae-won closed his eyes briefly. This was the moment they had been dreading and preparing for in equal measure. Send a coded message to Admiral Kunsu. The hammer is falling. At Earth Command, Kung Su received the message and felt a cold certainty settle over him. This was the culmination of months of planning and preparation. Every simulation, every drill, every contingency plan was about to be tested against reality. All units, this is Command. Council fleet en route to Sol System. Estimated arrival in 48 hours. Execute defensive plan Sigma. This is not a drill. Across the solar system, Earth's forces moved into position. The carrier Sol took up station near Jupiter, using the gas giant's gravity well to mask its position. Sujin's strike group positioned themselves in the asteroid belt, hiding among the rocks and ice. Defensive platforms went to full power, their sensors sweeping space for the approaching threat. On Mars, Commander Jamin supervised the evacuation of civilian populations to underground shelters. The red planet's thin atmosphere offered little protection against orbital bombardment, so every non-combatant was being moved to safety. Similar evacuations were happening on Luna and the orbital stations. President Hyun-ji met privately with her cabinet. If we lose, what happens to Earth? Best case scenario, said Defense Minister Bora. They occupy us and enforce the probationary status with military force. Worst case, they make an example of us. Glass planet, no survivors. Then we can't lose, Hien-Ji said simply. Failure is not an option because the alternative is extinction. Sajan appeared on the communications screen. Madam President, I have a request. If the battle turns against us, I want authorization to use the Prometheus Protocol. The room went silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The Prometheus Protocol was a last resort weapon. Something so devastating that its very existence was kept secret even from most of Earth's leadership. Tell me you're not serious, Bira said. I'm completely serious, Soyen replied. We built it for exactly this scenario. If Earth is about to fall, we detonate quantum disruption devices at key points throughout the solar system. It creates a cascade effect that makes the entire region of space unusable for faster-than-light travel. No council ships could enter or leave for centuries. That would trap us here too, Hien-Ji noted. Better trapped than dead. At least we'd have time to rebuild and prepare for the next round. President Hyang-Gi considered carefully. The Prometheus Protocol was essentially a doomsday weapon, one that would turn the Sol system into a fortress prison. But it would also ensure humanity's survival, which was the only goal that truly mattered. Authorization granted, she said, but only as absolute last resort. We fight first, die fighting if necessary. But we survive, if at all possible. As the meeting ended and officials hurried to their posts, Hien-Ji stood alone looking at Earth through the window. The blue marble hung in space, beautiful and fragile. Billions of lives depended on the decisions made in the next few days. 20 light-years away, Admiral Tharvin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the assembled council fleet. 300 warships from a dozen species, the largest military force assembled in living memory. It should have been inspiring. Instead, he felt uneasy. The humans had surprised them once. What if they surprised them again? The council fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel near Jupiter's orbit, and the sight was terrifying. 300 massive warships arranged, in perfect formation, their hulls reflecting the distant sun. At the center floated Admiral Tharvin's flagship, a dreadnought the size of a small moon. The message was clear. Council had brought overwhelming force, enough to crush any resistance. Admiral Kunsu watched from Earth Command as sensor data flooded in. The enemy fleet was even larger than intelligence had predicted. Support vessels and supply ships added another 100 craft to the armada. Against this, Earth had 42 combat vessels, orbital platforms, and drone swarms. The math was brutal. All units hold positions, Kung Su ordered. Do not engage until my command. Let them come to us. Admiral Tharvin opened a communication channel that broadcast throughout the solar system. Humans of Earth, I am Admiral Tharvin of the Council Defense Force. You have attacked Council property and defied lawful authority. Surrender immediately, and you will be shown mercy. Resist, and you will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to respond. President Hien-Ji stood in the command center beside Kyung-Soo. Should we answer? Let them wait, Kung-Soo replied. Every minute they spend wondering what we'll do is a minute we use to prepare. The hour passed in tense silence. The council fleet held position, weapons armed but not firing. They expected capitulation, a formal surrender broadcast that would restore their authority. When the hour ended with no response, Tharvin's mandibles clicked in frustration. Forward elements, advance. Weapons free on all military targets. Avoid civilian casualties where possible. The outer ring of council ships began moving toward Earth. They formed a wall of metal and energy shields, confident in their superiority. That confidence lasted exactly 4 minutes. Commander Jae-Huyen activated the drone swarms. From hidden positions throughout the asteroid belt, 20,000 small autonomous units launched simultaneously. Each drone was barely a meter across, too small for council sensors to track effectively. They accelerated toward the approaching warships at speeds no human pilot could survive. The Council's point defense systems opened fire, destroying dozens of drones. But there were too many, coming from too many directions. The drones swarmed over the outer ships like insects, targeting sensor arrays, communication dishes, and weapon ports. Individual drones carried small explosive charges, barely enough to damage military-grade armor. But hundreds of drones striking the same target in rapid succession could disable even the largest vessel. 3 Council cruisers went dark, their systems overwhelmed. 2 more lost propulsion and began drifting. The neat formation started to break apart as ships maneuvered to avoid the drone swarms. Captain Sujin saw her opportunity. All strike group units. Execute pattern Delta. Her ships dropped out of slip drive directly into the flank of the Council formation. Earth's railguns fired at point-blank range, and Council shields that were designed to stop energy weapons offered little protection against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. 3 Council dreadnoughts lost main propulsion. 1 had its entire bridge section torn away before the Council could react. Sujin's group vanished back into slip drive. Admiral Tharvin slammed his appendage against his command console. There. Using hit-and-run tactics. All ships tighten formation and activate full defensive screens. But tightening formation played into Earth's strategy. Commander Jamin and the Soul emerged from behind Jupiter. Launching a full missile barrage at the concentrated Council fleet, hundreds of missiles streaked toward their targets. Each one guided by adaptive AI that learned from the Council's countermeasures in real time. Council point defense destroyed many missiles, but not all. The ones that got through struck with devastating precision, targeting command ships and communication vessels. The Council fleet's coordination began to break down as different species ships lost contact with each other. Engineer Soyan watched from Earth's orbital platform as her defensive systems engaged. Railguns opened. Fire on Council fighters that tried to push toward the inner system. The platforms used predictive targeting algorithms, calculating where enemy ships would be rather than where they were. Council pilots, trained in standard evasion patterns, flew directly into the kill zones. Intelligence Director Minna monitored Council communications, and what she heard gave her hope. The different species were arguing over tactics. The reptilian ships wanted to charge forward aggressively. The crystalline vessels preferred to hold position and use long-range weapons. The insectoid forces were trying to coordinate both approaches. But without clear authority, the fleet was becoming disorganized. They're fighting as individuals, not as a unified force, Mina reported. Each species is reverting to their own tactical doctrine. Then we exploit that, Kung Su said. He opened channels to all Earth forces. All units. Focus fire on the Cassix fleet elements. Drive a wedge through their formation. The strategy worked perfectly. Captain Sujin's strike group hit the reptilian vessels hard, knowing they would respond with aggressive counterattacks rather than coordinated retreats. Cassix's ships broke formation to chase the Earth vessels, creating gaps that other Council species didn't fill. The unified front fractured on the Council station thousands of light-years away. Captain Daewon listened to the battle reports coming through Hannah's intercepted communications. They're actually doing it. Earth is holding against 300 ships. Not just holding, Hannah corrected. Winning. Council casualties are mounting, and they haven't disabled a single Earth vessel yet. Gigwu pulled up tactical displays. The Council relied on intimidation and overwhelming numbers. They never developed actual combat doctrine because they never needed to. Earth has been practicing warfare since before we had written language. This isn't even a fair fight, just not in the way the Council expected. The battle raged for 3 hours. Earth's forces struck and faded, never staying in one position long enough to be pinned down. The drone swarms continued their harassment, forcing Council ships to waste ammunition on small targets. Platforms created deadly zones that Council forces couldn't cross without heavy losses. Admiral Tharvin finally had to admit the truth. His fleet was losing. 28 ships disabled. 47 with significant damage. He still hadn't reached Earth's defensive perimeter. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, hitting him. From unexpected angles, using weapons his ships weren't designed to counter. He opened a direct channel to Admiral Kung Su. This is Admiral Tharvin. I request a ceasefire to negotiate terms. On Earth Command, the room erupted in shocked celebration. Kyonsu held up a hand for silence before responding. This is Admiral Kyonsu. We accept your ceasefire request. Hold your current position, and we will do the same. President Hyen appeared beside him. We need to talk to Velthros directly, not through intermediaries. It took 6 hours to arrange the communication. When Velthros finally appeared on screen, his crystalline form had lost some of its glow. Behind him, Captain Daewon stood with his arms crossed, having been brought from the secured communications hub to participate. Earth has demonstrated its military capability, Velthros began stiffly. The Council is willing to discuss revised terms, President Hanji said firmly. We're not negotiating revised subjugation, we're negotiating full equality. Earth becomes a full member of the Council with all rights and responsibilities. We maintain our sovereignty and our right to self-defense. Kassex appeared on a secondary screen, his reptilian face twisted with rage. You cannot dictate terms to the Council. We still have overwhelming numbers. Then use them, Kung Su said calmly. Continue the battle. Accept more losses. And when you finally defeat us, if you defeat us, what will you have gained? A devastated solar system that will resist occupation for generations. Or you can accept that humanity deserves respect and move forward as equals. Velthros was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. The Council will convene to discuss your proposal. You have 24 hours, Hyenji replied. After that, we resumed defensive operations. The negotiation took 3 days. Various Council species argued back and forth, but the military reality was undeniable. Earth had proven it could defend itself and strike Council assets anywhere in the galaxy. Forcing submission would cost thousands of ships and decades of conflict. Many species began questioning whether the Council's rigid hierarchy was worth that price. On the 4th day, Velthros made the announcement. The Council has voted to accept Earth as a full member with complete sovereignty. All previous ultimatums are withdrawn. Earth will be granted the same rights and responsibilities as any Council member species. In the command center on Luna, the celebration was restrained, but genuine. They had won not through conquest, but through demonstrating the cost of aggression. Earth had earned its place in the galaxy. Captain Daewon and the crew of the Horizon were finally released from the Council station. As their ship departed, Giwu looked back at the massive structure. Do you think they'll honor the agreement? They will, Daewon replied. Because we taught them something they'd forgotten over 3,000 years of dominance. Respect isn't given freely. It's earned. And sometimes earning it requires being willing to fight for what you believe in. 3 months later, Admiral Kung Su stood on Luna. Looking up at Earth, a young officer named Yunji approached him, fresh from the academy. Admiral, do you think there will be another war? Kung Su considered the question carefully. Probably not. The Council learned that subjugating Earth would cost more than accepting us. Other species watched what happened and are starting to question the old hierarchy. Change is coming to the galaxy, and it started because humanity refused to kneel. What made the difference? Yanji asked. We were outnumbered and outgunned. Kyung-Su agreed. But we had something they lacked. We had experience with real conflict. We had innovation born from necessity. And most importantly, we had the willingness to risk everything for our freedom. The Council had forgotten that some things are worth fighting for. We reminded them. On Earth, President Hyen addressed the United Earth Assembly. The past months have tested us in ways we never imagined. We faced a choice between freedom and safety, between dignity and survival. We chose both. We chose to fight for our right to exist as equals in this galaxy. And we won, not through aggression, but through defending what we believe in. She paused, looking at the representatives from every nation. Earth is now part of the galactic community as equals. We will face new challenges, new opportunities, and new responsibilities. But we face them as free people, standing tall among the stars. The assembly rose in unified applause. In the years that followed, Earth became a leading voice for reform in the Council. The old system of forced compliance slowly gave way to genuine cooperation between equals. Other species that had submitted generations ago began demanding the same rights Earth had won. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. And humanity would never forget the price of freedom or the courage it took to defend it.